So I'm going to dive right in. So as a bookseller, I have about 10 seconds to describe a book and to sell a book to someone. So before we go into depth, what would be your 10-second pitch for the people we choose?
Ooh, it is a story about a very unexpected summer of a girl who, is on a quest to figure out a part of her identity, who her sperm donor was. And when she gets the answer to that, it, really throws everything into question, her relationships and what she knows about love and how she defines love and family.
So now, where did you get the idea?
I've had this idea for a very long time. I had it well before I wrote my book before this, Undoing of Thistle Tate, but it was a really scary one in terms of how to approach it. I knew I wanted to tell a story about falling in love with someone that you're not allowed to love, and then learning how to undo that love, because family is such an interesting thing. I grew up with friends that were so close, I felt like they were family, whether we shared blood or not, and you can have, friends, if you're, that they might be attracted, but you can't be attracted to them because they feel like family, like you grew up together and you feel like they're a brother or a sister. So I was really interested in the idea of not knowing that someone actually had that blood connection, and what it would feel like if you had to kind of walk back from some of those feelings without it being a dirty or scandalous or sensationalized thing. I didn't want to push too far in that direction and make it too explicit in that way, because that's not for me what it's about. It's about just how love feels different, whether it's friend or family or romantic, and how those feelings can shift and evolve with time. And if you can learn to unlove someone in that way and love them in a different way, and still, have the beauty of that relationship in your life.
So now, can you tell us a little bit about our main character, Calliope, who is just, I loved her.
Thank you.
She's so cool, so put together. Even when life falls apart, she's pretty tough, and she was kind of like my hero in the book. So could you introduce everyone to Calliope?
Yeah, of course. So Calliope Silversmith is has just, cusp of summer, has just graduated and will be turning 18. And she has had the most wonderful childhood, growing up in a clearing in the middle of the woods. She has two wonderful moms, Mama and Minnie. One of them is very sweet, one of them is very tough, and they work very well together and have been like a perfect counterbalance. And she's never known which of them is her biological mother. And it's something she's thought about over the years, and kind of, Mama yelled at me for this. So, Mimi's probably my mom, has gone back and forth and kind of looking at her personality traits and what she looks like and who she is, trying to decide, who is her mom and how important that actually is, and wrestling with that, because she knows that at the end of the day, they're both equally her mom and equally her family, but still having that natural curiosity, and knowing when she turns 18, she's able to find out who the sperm donor was, because he was an anonymous donor, and wrestling with how much he matters, how much his identity matters, because she, grew up in a very full family, and she knows who she is, and she knows, who her family is, but she still has those questions. And she's also very much grounded by her two best friends, Ginger and Noah. And Noah has always had kind of unrequited feelings for her, but like I was saying before, she loves him like a brother and cannot imagine loving him in any other way. That feels, dirty to her to imagine ever dating him, and can't understand how he's able to feel that. So, like I said, she grew up in this very magical small town that she dislikes in some ways, but she loves the natural beauty of it, and the woods around her house, and the peacefulness of that, and is very in her own happy place. And it's a very simple one. She doesn't need much. She has her moms and her best friends, and is scared for what is beyond that after the summer.
So now, kind of like the opening scene, I loved, because it just draws you into the whole book. So it's really not a spoiler alert, but can you talk about that first kind of scene and how the story gets started?
Yeah, so she's sitting on the porch reading, very hot. Her mothers don't really believe in air conditioning, and she's escaping the heat on her porch. And this boy walks into the clearing, and she, like I said, she lives kind of, you know, out in the woods. She doesn't have any immediate neighbors, so it's confusing why someone would be there. And she knows everyone in her town. So it's this boy Max, who is covered in paint splatters. He is actually over there looking for sugar. His family just moved into this old abandoned house next door, and this old abandoned house is one of like small town lore. It has kind of a sordid history of someone maybe dying there, being killed. No one's quite sure, but it's something Calliope and her friends have always talked about and speculated about, and would dare each other to run up the steps and touch the door, you know, growing up, silly things like that. So when someone has suddenly moved into this house, it's a new person in her orbit in this very secluded, you know, space in the woods that used to just kind of belong to her and her mom's. There's suddenly a new family there, and this new boy, Max, and she just immediately sparks to him. They banter a lot. He's from Philly, and is very resentful of the fact that he's spending his senior year in this small town, that his parents have been having marital issues and just kind of needed a fresh break, and brought them to this new place as a fresh start. And he does not want to be there, as you know, many people that had been born and raised in my town did not want to be here by the time they were, you know, 17, 18. And yeah, he comes into the summer, and, you know, she immediately, there's this feeling that he might change everything, and you know, change the trio that she's always had with her friends and the dynamic she's had with them. And she's just never made a new friend like this before, and never felt such an immediate connection. And she's not sure what that connection is or what it should be.
That scene I just love. I just how they banter back and forth. It's the coolest thing. But I'm going to say something I've been dying to ask, because as I was reading it, I wanted to snack and I wanted all of the baked goods. And I'm wondering, do you have the recipe, like the lemon bar? And I was like, oh my God, I would love the lemon bars. So do you bake, and do you have the recipes for those?
That's a very good question. I feel like I'm going to disappoint you. I would say I'm very much an aspirational baker. I used to do it more when I mean, definitely when I'd be at my parents' house and actually had a big kitchen. I will say being a baker in a city apartment is like really not fun. It's very hard to do. I have like 6 inches of counter space that isn't covered by like a dish rack or, you know, other necessities like that. So it's very hard to bake there, but I used to love it. I used to do it a lot more. I never really liked to cook. I don't like the creativity involved in cooking. I like the rules of baking. And I'm someone, I will say, like, I don't like a lot of white sugar and foods. Like, I use stevia. I'm very much like, you know, Mama and Mimi in that way. So I like to say, now that I have my toddler, that when we start giving him more sweet things, which I'm pretty strict about still, I will give him like cake for a second birthday, but beyond that, he doesn't get much sugar. So I'm still hoping I'm going to become that kind of mom and make those kind of baked goods. So maybe in like a year or two, I will have a different answer for you. I'll have to learn to overcome that anxiety of cooking in a very tiny apartment kitchen.
You described it like, because I'm a foodie and I love food. You just described it like what my mouth was like. It was watering. So, I mean, was there someone in your life that you based these characters off of?
I think they're the baked goods I want to be eating. And the moms, I don't know. I mean, I think it's like one of the first times I've written a book of the 4 that I've written, where the parents were like very new people to me, that I wasn't pulling from people in my life. I mean, that's always right. Like that's my parents' fears, you know, when they're reading my books, like how they're going to be cast in a certain light. And I mean, that was a really big one with my first one, Immaculate, where it's a teen girl who's a virgin and a pregnant mother, and her parents have very strong responses, and the dad in particular is one. And my dad was like, ugh, like this, you really think I would be this awful if it happened to you? So I don't know. I feel like with each book, the people are a little bit less people that I actually know and more, I don't know, people that have just kind of sprung from the strange recesses of my brain.